fasting and low carb diets. Okay, and I am a podcast host called Low Carb MD Podcast. We talk about the struggles doctors face and how we can get people healthy with lifestyle. And so I have a bias towards low carb diets. So just so you know that. And my wife, you know, has a company where she sells low carb cookies. So that's a financial disclosure. So if you hear me talk about low carb diets in this lecture, you can know that I have some bias going into this. Okay. So my objectives here are basically to, you know, review the incidence of obesity, comorbidities, discuss the guidelines, nutritional epidemiology, discuss why you are hungry and why you're eating what you're eating. Okay, I'm going to talk about that. We're going to discuss low carbohydrate diets and intermittent fasting. Has everybody heard of keto here? Okay, is it evil? Yes, somebody said it, okay. And no, it's not. Has anybody heard of intermittent fasting? Okay, all right. And is meat healthy? I just want to, just raise your hands. Is meat healthy? In moderation. Good, we're going to talk about this. Has anybody heard of the concept of a calorie? Should we be controlling our calories? Has anybody heard of that? Yeah, does that make sense to all of you? I just want to know. Does it make sense? It makes sense to all of you. Okay, we're going to completely debunk everything you think, okay, today. Because it's all, excuse my language, bullshit. And I'm going to explain to you why it's bullshit so you understand, so you don't propagate the message of calories you see. You don't propagate the message of eat less and move more to a patient you see, because that's not what's going to work. If I take you right now, you're all eating, and I say eat less right now, would that be easy or hard? Very hard, right? And if I said get up and move more right now, would that be easy or hard? Yeah, you're sitting down and you're sitting in front of food, right? So eat less and move more is not a strategy that has ever worked in 50 years of eat less and move more, as in terms of being the medical advice that we have given. It has not worked. Obesity is rampant. So let's just stamp it out right now. Eat less and move more is not advice for somebody suffering with obesity. All right, so here's the case presentation. You have a 32-year-old male patient with class 3 morbid obesity. That basically means BMI over 45. Pre-diabetes, he presents with extreme fatigue, daytime somnolence. Gabe, this is for you. You wanted a case, so here's your case. He's got a family history of morbid obesity. And his prior visits with you, you've recommended that he see a nutritionist. Okay? He went to the nutritionist, and the nutritionist basically said, eat the size of your hand. Has anybody ever heard that? Eat the size of your hand or eat the size of your palm. Eat in moderation, right? You've heard that? Have you ever heard eating 6 to 7 small meals a day? Yeah, okay. And he said, you can have whatever you want, just have it in moderation. Those Doritos and the chips you have, just have 2 of them. How many of you have had 2 chips so far and put the rest down? Not happening, right? And you guys should know better. You should know better. You're medical students, right? You should know better to eat less and move more. So anyway, this is what he said to them, and the patient is disenfranchised, right? The primary care physician on other times have said, eat more fruits and whole grains. Have you heard this message? To eat more fruits. Does it sound healthy to you? Yeah, it sounds healthy, right? Okay. He can't do it. And the primary care doctor said, why don't you try a plant-based approach? This is like the big thing in lifestyle medicine right now. Plant-based approach. It works. It improves glycemia. Okay, in the literature. It works. It stabilizes blood sugar. It improves cholesterol. But he said, I can't do it. I can't do it. He wants to eat animals. Anyway. So have you heard this before? Does this all sound like reasonable advice before this lecture? Does this all sound reasonable to you? Yes, it does, right? I'm going to tell you how unreasonable it is. So his primary care doctor stressed the importance of exercise. Okay? This guy is BMI 45, over 350 pounds. His joints hurt and he's tired. Okay? And he's been told to exercise. Does that sound like reasonable advice? Just think about it, right? Sounds reasonable at first thought. It's not really reasonable. He's coming to you and he can't do anymore. Can you guys go run an hour a day right now? Or are you guys knee deep in anatomy? You know, so just think about that. So, and the doctor said, you know, maybe you could do gastric bypass. This all seems reasonable, right? This all seems reasonable. Is it reasonable? The patient today presents for your advice. So what are you going to say? What are you going to tell this obese patient who's tired, right? Are you going to tell him to eat 2 chips and put the rest of the bag away? Are you going to tell him to, as you're eating those chips right there, I see you, yeah. You haven't put it, so why don't you have enough willpower to put those chips down, right? So it's not about willpower. We have to think about how to educate our you know, patients who are suffering, okay? How do we educate them in a way that they can implement it, okay? So let's think about this case that Gabe asked me to bring up, and let's think about it as we go through the literature, okay? So what I want you to take away, okay, really what I want you to take away from this lecture is bring it back to the patient in front of you, okay? Let it be a clinically driven approach, okay? And what I want you to understand is obesity, diabetes, fatty liver, depression, arthritis, sleep apnea. These aren't relegated. You don't have this forever, okay? You don't have these forever. These can be reversed. They're not cemented in stone. We reverse these every day. Okay, my first 5 years of practice, I've never taken one person off of insulin. Once they're on it, diabetes is a chronic and worsening disease. I take somebody off insulin every day in my practice now, every single day, saving thousands of dollars, injections, A1Cs improving, limbs being saved, right? Because that glycemia improves. So these aren't things that are cemented in stone. If a patient has tried to lose weight and has failed, you need to teach them how to control appetite, not eat less. How do you eat less? Okay, how do you eat less? Not how to count calories. Do all of you know the calories of the chips you're eating? Does that mean anything if you're trying to eat less of it? No, no, it doesn't. Do we have more Fitbit over the last 10, 20 years or less Fitbit or more? Do we have more MyFitnessPals or less MyFitnessPals? Are calories on everything you see in New York City? Has that helped obesity at all? No. Okay, I'm glad we all recognize this. All right, so calories, do they matter? Maybe they do, but do they clinically matter? You guys are telling me no. So remember at the least that I've never met one obese patient who wanted to be obese. If they're seeing you, it's not some moral flaw. They don't know how to eat less. Just like you don't know how to eat less when I'm telling you to stop, put those potato chips down. She keeps eating them though, okay? She keeps eating them. So how do you eat less? This is what we want to teach people. So let's go over. Is it all about calories? How do I get rid of this thing here on the top? Who knows IT? All right, here we go. Better, okay, that's much better. So is it all about calories? This is a fancy study, fairly recent, and I want to talk about it because it begins to demolish the importance of calories, okay? It begins to demolish the importance of calories. So this was a study done by an excellent group, basically Jeff Volek, okay? He took people and for a 2-week period, he gave them a low carb, medium carb, and high carb diet. And they were all the same calories. And he sought to determine what would be the effect if I gave everybody the same calories, just a different amount of carbohydrates, okay? So same calories, right? We're talking about dismantling the importance of calories, which is the message we've been told for the last 50 years that hasn't worked. So he gave one group low amount of carbohydrates, right? 6%. Another group 32% carbohydrates, and another group 57%. Okay, and what he found was very interesting. The low carb group lowered their triglycerides, increased the HDL, decreased the glucose, decreased the blood pressure. Okay, independent of calories. So what I want you to understand is the calories were controlled, the effects, physiologic effects were different. Well, let's understand that clinically. Let's understand how that makes sense, okay? Let's say I said, I'm going to give you 2 slices of pizza. Okay, does that seem like a reasonable amount of food? She says yes. Okay, 2 slices of pizza, reasonable amount of food. Okay, Now, if I told you to eat 10 eggs, is that a reasonable amount of food? Okay. Yes. Yeah, the Jack guy says 10 eggs is good. Okay. So the Jack guy says 10 eggs is good. So pay attention. Okay. The Jack guy says 10 eggs. So if you ate 2 slices of pizza, how long will it take for you to get hungry? Like 2 hours, you'll be going back to that cold pizza that's sitting on your counter, right? And it tastes even better cold, right? A couple hours later, you're hungry again. If you eat 10 eggs, which is the same amount of calories as 2 New York pizzas, how long will you be full? Can you imagine how long you'd be full if you ate 10 eggs? How long would you be full? Much longer. Same calories, okay? A different effect on how long you cannot eat. If you had 10 eggs at 10 o'clock versus, or like 9 o'clock versus 2 slices of pizza, same calories, would you be sitting here eating those potato chips? If you had the 2 slices of pizza, or let's say you had the Starbucks coffee and the donut, would you be sitting here and eating those potato chips? Probably you would be, right? So different calories have a different effect on satiety. But not only do they have a different effect on satiety, they have a different effect on metabolic disease, okay? The lower you make your carbohydrates, calories controlled, the lower your triglycerides, the higher your HDL. This is resolving metabolic syndrome. The blood pressure improves, okay? So despite being, this is an interesting point here. Have you ever heard that saturated fat's going to raise your cholesterol, right? So raising the good cholesterol, decreasing the triglycerides, all right? The higher saturated fat diet makes you wonder what's going on. Not only that, despite being higher in saturated fat, the carbohydrate restricted diet decreased the total plasma saturated fats. How would that happen? If you're eating more saturated fat, how would that happen? Let's think about these things, okay? Think about these things, okay? Here's another calorie-controlled study. They took adolescents, all right? People aged 13 with fatty liver and obesity, okay? They said, all we're gonna do is take out your sugar and give you starch. We're gonna keep the calories the same. What happened? Their fatty livers resolved. The fatty liver in these young kids resolved, okay? This was done in the Latino and African American population similar to what you see here. Calorie for calorie, okay? They removed sugar, added starch. Fatty liver resolves. So I want you to start thinking, do calories matter? Maybe, but there's other things going on here that maybe matter more. Okay, this is basically graphs of their fatty liver. This is something called de novo lipogenesis. It's your liver making fat. You give your body fructose or excess sugar, liver will make fat. Okay, that's why when you give saturated fat, you don't get higher plasma saturated fat. And when you give sugar, or when you remove sugar, you get less fat. Okay, the triglycerides drop. The liver stops making fat. Okay, and this happened, you know, without weight loss. They didn't lose much weight. Calories were the same, liver fat improves. Your organ fat, you ever heard of organ fat being associated with heart disease? Their organ fat in these young Latinos and African Americans was improving. Okay, so what I want you to start thinking is maybe calories don't matter. So let's just take a look at these 2 studies. Literature so far tells us fructose restriction improves liver fat. The guideline says eat, 2 to 4 servings of fruit. The literature so far tells us carbohydrate restriction improves metabolic syndrome. The guidelines say eat 6 to 11 servings of healthy whole grains. Okay, and this is independent of calories or weight loss, meaning they say, nutritional guidelines say eat a calorie restricted diet that suits your weight, blah, blah, blah. And whether we're calories controlled, we're seeing metabolic effects improve. Are you questioning what we've been told so far? Have you all seen this before? Yeah. Have you heard about any of this before? No, right? No. So let's start questioning these things. All right, this is what the news looks like. Okay, this is the news from a couple months ago. Basically, the ketogenic diet for obesity is terrible, and it was authored by a bunch of plant-based vegan, authors, okay? Plant-based vegan works. It stabilizes blood sugar, okay? Stabilizes blood sugar, and it lowers the LDL cholesterol in the literature, okay? But when you're interpreting the literature, this was published in JAMA Internal Medicine, okay? Everybody comes with a bias. I'm giving you the low-carb bias today. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. They're giving you, and a lot of lifestyle medicine is giving you the pro-plant, anti-meat bias. And I want to talk about that because just yesterday an article came out, basically hot off the press, in the Annals of Internal Medicine. Does anybody read the Annals here? Not yet, right? You will soon. Start reading it. Sign up for these journals on Twitter or online or whatever, and get it in your inbox. Just read through the titles. Click on the ones you're interested in, okay? So basically this group did a massive look at all the epidemiologic data, and they came to the conclusion with over 4 million participants that there was a low certainty of evidence that making any reductions in processed or unprocessed food, that it actually has any clear impact on health. And if there is an impact on health, it's tiny, okay? But you've all heard that restricting meat is unhealthy, right? Or you should restrict meat, right? Meat's bad. You've all heard that, right? Is it true? I don't know. Maybe there's a case for it, right? There is a case for it. But when you group the data together, at the least, the evidence is low quality, okay? It's low quality, all right? So you're thinking like, what do I believe? What do I believe? When you go to these fancy conferences where people talk about obesity and they all hate me there, they don't know. They're like, maybe it's individual psychology. Have you ever heard that? Maybe you're depressed and stressed eating. Have you ever heard that? Maybe you're stressed eating right now. You're thinking about, you're thinking about your anatomy test and you're just chomping on chips, right? Maybe it's the environment. Maybe it's your biology, your genetics. Have you ever heard genetics? That's a big load of bullshit. Okay, or maybe it's, just the way we eat and you're not exercising. You ever heard that? You're not exercising? Anyway, they have no clue. These guys have no clue. They can't put the puzzle pieces together. You're like, well, why does this all matter? Just tell me what to do for that 32-year-old that Gabe wanted me to talk about, right? Okay. One day eggs are good, next day eggs are bad, and they cause cholesterol. Now they're good again, now they're bad, and he's eating 12 of them and he's like looking jacked and happy and, Okay, so the reality is we don't know much because the level of evidence is low quality. The epidemiologic data doesn't tell us much about the patient in front of you, right? When they send out questionnaires to 1 million people, say, do you eat meat? Check yes or no. Do you eat, soda, drink soda? Check yes or no. It just doesn't turn into actionable intelligence. So we don't know, you don't know. All right, you're going to get about 25 hours of nutrition total in your medical school career. Is that going to be enough to help somebody with obesity? Probably not, right? And you all think calories are the way out. You all think that meat's unhealthy. You all think that, you have to eat less and move more. Just hold it. Just hold it. Yeah. Okay, so obesity is not, I'll promise I'll get to it. Obesity is not a moral failure. We went over this. Nobody wants to be obese. Nobody wants to be stigmatized by obesity. It's not eat less, move more. They are forced to accept this because you don't know any better. I don't know any better. Nobody knows any better. Even at the top level, when you go to these conferences, they don't know. They say it must be calories. It's the amount of energy that you're taking in. We just talked about the weaknesses in that. Is it a willpower deficiency? Did all of a sudden around 1950, everybody stopped being able to control calories and then obesity started to go up? Not really that either, right? Doesn't make sense. Is it an inability to count calories? Even nutritionists and doctors are off by 20%, meaning like the best of us, if we were to put all our stuff into MyFitnessPal, we would miss that little snack we had, or we would underestimate what we had. So even if we were trying to quantify calories to decrease energy intake, we would be off by 20%. What would an high school educated person with 2 jobs, what would they do? What would they do? So counting calories, counting points, not going to work. Can you guys count? How many points did you guys just eat? Right? Not really. Nobody wants to be obese. Don't forget that. It's not laziness. That 32-year-old wanted to exercise, but he's tired and his joints hurt, right? Are you telling him to go exercise? He's 350 pounds. He's got arthritis. You want him to go run it off? Doesn't make sense. Think about it. So the main problem is people with obesity, they don't want to see you. Okay? You have no clue what to do. Maybe you'll tell them to take pills. Maybe you'll tell them to take surgery. You'll judge them. Your exam tables probably here in the lab, they don't even go above 300 pounds. That's the rated limit. Your chairs, your chairs have armrests in your waiting room. Well, you don't have a waiting room, but you'll have one. Just remember that. They can't fit here. They're scared about breaking this chair, okay? Because they're 600 pounds. They're 500 pounds. They can't fit in the armrest. They fear falling. They fear breaking your furniture. You have to kind of get past these roadblocks to care for them. Think about this. Okay, the real reason why they don't want to see you, you don't know what it feels like to be endlessly hungry like they do. You don't, unless you've been obese. It's a different, on functional MRIs, we know obese patients experience hunger differently. You've never had to ask for a seatbelt extender on an airplane, okay? You have no clue what it feels like to be obese, to have your joints hurt and to hear somebody say, exercise more, right? You don't know what that's like. And you can't get past your own preconceptions of obesity. Everybody here thought calories are what matters, eat less and move more. That's what everybody thought. Meat's unhealthy. Those were your preconceived notions. Your advice is crap, okay? Your advice is crap. So this is the problem. Just appreciate this for a second. What's gone on in the last 20 years? It's just blossoming. And we're all watching it happen. I mean, we're literally year by year watching this spread. And we're preaching the same thing, right? What's going on here? What's going on? If this was a disease like HIV, a communicable disease, we would have been on top of this, right? If this was an infectious disease, we would have been all on top of this. So let's figure out the map that we just looked at. It looks really similar. All these maps look similar. Obesity, diabetes, arthritis. Shouldn't arthritis lag, right? If arthritis is wear and tear and not a metabolic disease, shouldn't it lag diabetes and obesity? Instead, the CDC maps look identical. Look identical. What's going on? Here's another factor. Short sleep duration looks almost the same. Mental health looks almost the same. They all look the same. Heart disease, cancer. You guys asking yourselves here, I know you're busy with anatomy, but are you thinking, what the f is going on? Right? What's the root cause of this? I'd like you to at least consider, is it what's right in front of you right now? What's right in front of you right now. So these emergence of new epidemics, if you ask the dean in the back how often you saw fatty liver disease 50 years ago, it would be less than 10%, much less, 5%. In the overweight population, it's like 40%. Fatty liver. This is now the leading cause, now that hepatitis C is curable, this is now the leading cause of liver cancer, fatty liver disease, okay? And the leading cause of requiring a transplant. PCOS didn't exist really more than 50 years ago. And now it's an epidemic. The mental health problem, right? What's going on? What's the underlying issue? Obesity definitely drives a lot of those problems. And at the least, it's associated, it's strongly associated. So let's consider a unifying etiology. Is it the fact that we don't have enough gyms? Is it we have a gastric bypass deficiency in our population? Seems ludicrous, right? Seems ludicrous. Do we lack phentermine? I don't know if the dean's taught that to you yet, but do we lack phentermine? Is it genetics? Did our genetics change? Did we all mutate in 1950 and beyond? And are we mutating actively year over year? Do these seem a little ridiculous in this context? I'm not trying to downplay it, but you understand how I am. Is it TV? When you go to these conferences, they say it must be the TV. It must be the TV. Or the advertisements. Have you ever heard that? The advertisements are making you want to eat stuff? You heard that, right? Does that seem like a reasonable idea? Or maybe it's the lack of exercise, video games, heat, air conditioning. You know, these are all factors, cars. Nobody ever mentions the crap food that's literally right in front of us, right? They don't say maybe it's the potato chips, which are vegan. Okay, our surgical colleagues, so we're a medical, I don't mean to downplay caring for animals. It's just being humorous, so I apologize. Okay, our surgical colleagues, they're pretty damn good at quote unquote remitting obesity. If you do a gastric bypass, you get about a 30% reduction in weight loss, in weight. If you do a sleeve, you get about a 25% reduction. And then if you do a gastric balloon or banding, they can literally put a balloon in your stomach now. I don't know if you guys know this, but it's inflatable, takes your appetite away. These are all reasonable options, okay? And they work. But what I want you to pay attention to something is here. What happens after 1 to 2 years? Starts going back up, right? So you've made their stomach the size of your palm, okay? And yet the weight goes back up. So we understand that this is a Band-Aid at the best. It's a really effective Band-Aid, but it's not stopping the problem. Are we all destined to regain weight? What's driving this? Okay? Our medical colleagues, people like me, these fancy, obesity medicine doctors, they have drugs. You didn't learn about all these drugs, but there's drugs that can make you lose about 10% of your body weight. Okay? There's drugs and they work. They're effective. Okay, some of these drugs inhibit appetite. Some of them take away kind of the reward. They work on the reward centers of the brain. They work. There's drugs there's amphetamine-like drugs. Oh my God, I hope I'm right on the mechanism of action. Phentermine. So there's drugs that increase your metabolism and help you lose weight. So I'm going to take the best one, and I'm going to put it on this is what they used for their FDA approval. We see a similar pattern to that bypass. When you look at their 2 and 3 year data, it actually keeps going back out. The peak weight loss is about 1 year, and then they slowly regain weight, just like the bypass and the surgery. So even if we chemically inhibit your appetite and increase your metabolism, for some reason we keep gaining weight, and nobody really knows. So let's admit failure. We don't really know. I mean, you guys don't know. You think it's calories. We discussed about the issues with that. So we don't really know, and we've watched it happen. We've watched this blossom, right? We've watched it get worse, okay? You guys don't have Epic and stuff like that, but, we're busy talking with pharma drug reps and worrying about coding, and, you don't have to deal with that. But we've basically, I think we've failed our mission and our oath. You guys don't know that yet, but you're going to meet a lot of people who've struggled with obesity, and you're going to feel like you may have failed them. And we are failing them. I mean, look at what's going on. I seem to think that, really there's no shortage of people who benefit from everybody being confused, right? This is like a world-class researcher, Walter Longo, and they sell fasting mimicking food. Have you ever heard of this, fasting mimicking food? It's a plant-based, I'm going hard on the plant-based thing. It's a plant-based, low-calorie meal replacements for people who are fasting. Can you tell me why, if you're going to fast, that you need food? Right? Right? Doesn't make sense. Okay, so let's think about this critically. What do the guidelines say? They say eat more fruits, more grains, lower fat, lean meat, Don't forget to eat less and move more. Eat sweets in moderation. Just so you know, Nestle is very happy to make infographics talking about that because all they do is sell granola bars and granola and cereal, and they're very happy to process carbohydrates and sell them. Okay, so they're very happy with this message. Okay, they're very happy with this message. So, what is it the TV? Is it the TV? Is it the cars? Is it the advertisements? This is a great study, okay, because it drives home the point. In Montreal, a group of scientists, they looked at all the different raccoons in the city, in the suburb, and in the farm country, right? And they looked and they measured their blood sugar, their weight, okay? What they found was the raccoons and the rats and the animals and the pigeons in the cities have more cholesterol than this group and other groups that have done studies like this. Around the city, the animals are obese. They're diabetic. The raccoons are diabetic. The rats are diabetic. The crows have high cholesterol, okay? And then if you go to the suburbs, they're pre-diabetic range. So this is like glycosylated protein. It's basically like an A1C. Do you guys know what an A1C is? Yeah. So it's like the raccoon A1C. So in the suburbs, they have pre-diabetes, and they're overweight, not obese. Okay. And then in the country, right? In the country, what happens? They're basically not overweight, not diabetic. The birds, they don't have dyslipidemia in the country, whereas the birds in the city have high cholesterol. So what's going on here? What's going on here, right? Don't forget our own pizza rat, right? You guys remember him? Why is he risking his life to carry a pizza? Did you ever wonder that? Why is he willing to lose everything? Right? Just think about that. It's pizza. Okay? So this problem, I want you to think about it because what I want you to think about, that raccoon, does he see advertisements and understand advertisements? No. Does he watch TV? Is he exposed to too much TV? Is the raccoon exposed to too much TV? No. Should he count his calories on his should he eat the size of his raccoon paw? Yes. Does this seem insane to you for any other animal to make this recommendation? Does it seem insane to tell him to use MyFitnessPal? Yes or no? Yes. Do you view it as insane when you're about to tell an obese patient with obesity or diabetes? Does it seem insane? No. Let's try to unify the way we think about this then. Okay, so here's another problem. Fruits, right? They're healthy. Everybody think that fruits are healthy here? I've been called on what's that site? Oh, shit. WebMD. That's the one. Oh, you know about it. I was quoted as saying that I've called fruits poison. So I'm going to be very clear with the message today. Fruits are not poison. Okay? But what happens to other animals when they eat excessive fruit? Okay? They basically get too much, basically cavities. They get obese and they get diabetic. So in the Melbourne Zoo, the lead veterinarian, and this is all across the country now, what they were doing, they were feeding the monkeys bananas, and they only ate the bananas and they weren't eating other stuff, and they were getting cavities, they were getting obese, they were getting fatty liver. So they said, we have to restrict it. We have to restrict the fruit because they're preferentially eating the fruit. Okay? And they said the issue is that these cultivated fruits have been genetically modified to be much higher in sugar content than their natural ancestral fruits. And they saw a massive improvement in their health when they restricted the fruit. Well, when we restricted fructose in adolescent Latino and African Americans, their fatty liver resolved. It's not so far off, right? So are all fruits and vegetables created equal? Is a wild strawberry the same as the Monsanto strawberries we all eat? You know, is a wild banana the same as a banana that we eat? Is a wild carrot the same as the grown carrots? Now they have cotton candy grapes. Is anybody eating that? Yeah. What I want you guys, is anybody here with diabetes? Anybody here with diabetes type 1? On insulin? No? Well, if you ever eat some grapes, those cotton candy grapes, take your blood sugar an hour later. See what happens. Let me know. Text me. Okay? So what I want you guys to see here is that maybe all fruits are not created equal. Okay? Maybe they're not all created. This is a modern strawberry. This is a wild strawberry. This has 100% more sugar than this, and it has 50% less fiber. If a cereal company put 50% less fiber and 100% more sugar in their cereal, what would you say from a public health standpoint? Not a good idea. We're going to cause fatty liver, right? We're going to cause fatty liver. So only if those raccoons ate more fruits and grains, right? Maybe that's not the way we should go about it. We have some human studies saying maybe we shouldn't do that. Only if they counted their calories, joined a gym. Maybe they should stop being weak. They're slobs, right? Eat 10 eggs and work out, right? Probably just the 10 eggs part. Do those animals need a nutritionist, medications, close follow-up to create a calorie deficit? Do they need those things? Maybe. Does it make sense? Not really. Not really. What about appetite control? What about food composition? What about the food environment? Okay? Maybe it is the food. Maybe the food's a problem. Okay? So what would drive an animal to eat to the point of ill health? What would make Pizza Rat do what Pizza Rat did? Cheese and bread? Is that what some say? Yeah, it's pretty damn close. So we know that sugar is addictive in itself. Okay? Oh my God, I'm running really late on time here. We know that sugar is independently addictive. Okay? We know that we can get animals to prefer sugar over cocaine, but there's more to it. Okay? In fact, if we take you and we flash like different foods in front of you and say, how much would you pay for it? If I flashed bread, you'd say $1. If I flashed cheese, you'd say $1. If I flashed bread and cheese, okay, you're going to say $2.50 if you're given an instant. Why is that? Okay, the reward centers of the brain prefer a carb and fat combination. Okay, they prefer a carb and fat combination. Look at all the foods that you love and people are addicted to. What are they? What's on every corner in New York City? Pizza, dough. The dough is the carbohydrate, right? The sauce is the sugar, and the cheese is basically the salt and fat. Carbs and fat. What's another addictive food? That time of the month, what do you guys crave, the women here? What? What is it? Hold on, what do you guys crave? Just tell me, that time of the month, what do you guys crave? Just chocolate. Chocolate. What's chocolate? So when you're hormonally driven to eat, no, hold on, give me one, follow me here. When you're hormonally driven to eat, okay, you guys are all laughing, but we have to realize appetite is hormonally driven, and we're going to talk about that. You guys want chocolate. Okay, why do you want chocolate? What is chocolate? Delicious, right? Chocolate is 50% carbohydrate, 50% fat. What else do you crave? When that diabetic, who's the diabetic? No, there's nobody diabetic here. When the diabetic's blood sugar is low, what does he or she ask for? Orange juice, sugar. What else? Ice cream, right? Get me the ice cream. Get me the orange juice. Get me a graham cracker. It's either sugar or a combination of sugar and fat. Ice cream is 50% milk fat, 50% sugar. Okay? Same thing as chocolate. Same thing as the pizza, okay? So when you're hormonally driven to eat, when you're diabetic and your insulin's too high and your blood sugar goes low, right? Or when it's that time of the month, okay? When you're hormonally driven to eat, your brain is thinking, let me eat carbs and fat, okay? So these are the most addictive foods. We went over them. They're basically a combination of carbs and fat, okay? They're all basically a combination of carbs and fat. Popcorn is the quintessential example, carbs and fat, okay? That's how you get hungry. What do you think the potato chips you ate were? Carbs and fat, right? Carbs and fat. Okay, what about the French fries? Not a vegetable. Yeah. What is French fry? Carbs and fat, right? So all these foods are basically, your brain is addicted to it. Your brain wants it. When it's hormonally driven to eat, it's going to want it, okay? When your blood sugar is low, when you're hormonally driven to eat, that's what it's going to seek. Anyway, okay, back to our patient. You guys remember the patient? Yeah, the 32-year-old big guy. Can't. So what's your guidance going to be? What are you going to say? Eat better, cut out the fat? Maybe you're going to say cut out the fat because now we know carbs and fat create that super reward, right? Maybe you're going to say exercise or those guidelines. What do the guidelines say? Should we cut out sugar and fat? That's not a bad idea, cutting out sugar and fat, okay? What does the patient say? All that stuff you've told me doesn't work. You know, what should I do? So maybe you say, well, what should I do? Okay, what should I advise him? Low fat, low carb, what should I advise? If you go to the medical literature, basically, there's a slight advantage to low carb diets. Okay, about a 5-pound difference. If you tell them to go low carb versus low fat, it's not a major difference. Let's say on average somebody loses 10 pounds, maybe they'll lose 12 or 13 pounds with a low carb. Maybe if you tell them low fat, it'll be like 10 pounds. Not a huge difference, but there's a slight favor to low carb diets. So maybe you're like, okay, I'll advise this big guy a low carb diet. Okay, so you tell him to eat less than 20 grams of carbs. Okay, and how do we know that the low carb diet may be a little bit better? Well, we've compared them head to head, like a drug trial. There was the A to Z trial, which compared them basically head to head. This is Atkins. The mean weight loss was about 5% of the body weight versus the vegan approach, versus the zone approach, the learn approach. These are all kind of low fat or mixed diets. Atkins did better. Atkins did better. There was a new trial in JAMA about 2 years ago that compared low fat to low carb, a healthy low fat versus a healthy low carb. Basically what they did was they said to everybody, don't eat sugar, don't eat flour. And then they said, half of you do low carb, half of you do low fat. The low carb group still did better at 3 and 6 months. At 12 months, it was nearly like, it's pretty, not statistically significant, but better with the low carb. So maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to go with the low carb approach. I'm just showing you the reason why it was pretty damn close and not different was because there was like almost no difference in the added sugar amongst diets. So it was like basically 4 grams different between groups. So the low fat group was also a low sugar group. So that's why I believe we see this equalization at 1 year. But still the low carb group did better, okay? So what's the mechanism of action of a low carb diet? How does it work? Anybody know? Okay, it works because basically ketogenic and low carb diets make people stop eating. Why do they stop? They stop eating about 600 to 1,000 calories a day in the beginning. Why? What's that? Ah, okay. So the critics say it works, okay? The patients report that there's decreased hunger and increased satiety. Critics say because it works because they're restricting the whole food group. It's a fad diet that restricts a food group. All the bread and stuff like that, it's not sustainable, it's a fad. You're removing everything. What the hell are they going to be left to eat? Eggs, meat, fish, chicken, Greek yogurt, that's it. Not much else. Green veggies. The critics also say there's no hormonal advantage, while proponents say there is. And they say that the satiety is due to decreased variety. You're basically just giving them meat and they're bored with food. So this is what the critics say. And they say there's no metabolic or hormonal advantage. So this is what a low carb diet looks like. Does this look boring to anybody? Well, now you guys ate potato chips, so maybe it's boring, but does this look like a boring diet? That guy's eyes are lighting up. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I like that diet, right? Avocado, bacon, eggs, chicken, right? Can you tell a patient, you know what? You can eat as much beef, chicken, fish, Greek yogurt, dairy, green leafy vegetables until you're full and feel like you gave them a healthy diet. Probably don't feel like that's a healthy diet, but it is. But it is. So how does it work? Maybe this satiety benefit's coming from the protein. The protein guy could probably tell you about that. When you increase protein, basically independent of calories, even if you're calorie restricted, if you raise protein, you're going to feel more full. Maybe that's how the low carb diet works. It has higher protein. Okay, so maybe another factor is that if you increase protein, does everybody know that when you have protein, your body burns some of it as heat? It's called thermogenesis. Has anybody ever heard of that? I know bro science guy probably knows that, right? He knows that. Okay, so yeah, so you lose about a calorie when you digest 1 calorie per gram to heat when you digest protein. Have you guys learned that in your nutrition block yet, or no? Oh yeah, okay. So maybe it's the protein-induced satiety, maybe it's the thermogenesis from protein. You're basically we inefficiently metabolize protein. Maybe that's how you expose weight loss. So what exactly do your patient? He's asking, how does it work? What should I expect? Is it all about protein? So it's not just about protein. Did you guys learn about these hormones like CCK and stuff like that yet? Yeah, what does CCK do? Oh, okay, wow. All right, so CCK is an enzyme that's released when you have protein and fat. Okay, it closes the pylorus, it distends the stomach, it makes the gallbladder contract. It also acts centrally, makes you full. Okay, if I inject it right into your brain, you get full. Okay, if you have high protein and high fat, of course that would be elevated. If you have carbohydrates, that will not be elevated. So this is a unique hormonal difference. High carb diets don't have CCK, high levels of CCK. There's also a hormone neuropeptide YY. Have you ever heard of that? Let's say I gave you guys all neuropeptide YY right before you came in and you had these, whatever this is, okay? You'd eat about 1/3 less. Neuropeptide YY, even a year out of eating a low carb diet, gets maintained high, whereas if you go low fat, you basically lose that hormonal signal. So if you keep carbs low, you maintain neuropeptide YY and you increase your satiety, you get full. CCK, neuropeptide YY, these are unique, right? All calories are not the same, right? Low carbohydrate, high fat, high protein, maintain CCK, neuropeptide YY, high carb, you lose that, okay? It also has effects on ghrelin, the hunger hormone, okay? It prevents basically the suppression of ghrelin. All right, and the bottom line, one of the most unique things that a low carbohydrate does is it immediately stabilizes blood sugar. When you stop eating carbohydrates, your blood sugar stabilizes, okay? Your insulin level decreases. In 2019, the ADA now recommends the diet, the ketogenic diet and low carb diets for the management of type 2 diabetes. This is something new, okay? This wasn't always this way. The plant-based people are not happy about this. What about insulin? How does insulin work? Do you guys know about insulin? Does insulin cause weight loss or weight gain? How does it cause weight gain? Okay, you think that it stores fat or whatever, right? I'll tell you how it causes weight gain. What happens when somebody's blood sugar is low? Do they ever ask for broccoli and chicken? No. They say, get me the crackers, get me the ice cream, get me the orange juice, get me the potato chips. Right? That's how it causes the weight gain. And the drugs that decrease blood sugar the most cause the most weight gain. And I'm going to get checked on that in a second, I'm sure. It's true. It's true. So I'm going to get checked on that, okay? Because the more rapid the insulin, the more weight gain. Sulfonylureas cause more weight gain. You guys will learn about these drugs. You haven't done pharmacology yet, okay? Oh, perfect. They're terrible drugs. You should never use them, okay? Okay. All right. So let's just wrap this up. Okay. What happens to the appetite of a patient who overdoses on insulin? Right? Should they open up MyFitnessPal and see how many calories are in their orange juice they're requesting? No. Right? Right. It's completely, their brain is hungry. Right? They'll annihilate anything between them and a candy bar. Okay. So I'm going to skip this slide because it's esoteric. But bottom line, when you drop blood sugar, it makes you desire the foods that people are addicted to, the foods that combine carbs and fat. Okay, that's the bottom line. Okay, this is a fancy study you don't really know about, didn't need to know about. This is something interesting. Okay, before somebody's diagnosed with diabetes, we see that their A1C creeps up over years. Do you guys see this? So as you guys are starting right now, you left college, you're not really exercising anymore, you're studying all the time, you're eating a bunch of crap basically every day. This is where you guys are at. The more carbs and fat and sugar and processed carbs you eat, this is how your life will look over the next 10 years. Your blood sugar will slowly rise up, and then your body won't be able to meet the needs, the insulin needs that you need to regulate that blood sugar, and your fasting glucose will skyrocket up. You'll be diagnosed with diabetes. This is like a 10-year look at how it happens, okay? Your fasting insulin slowly rises. Your body gets insulin resistant, stops responding to all the insulin that you're asking it to release when you eat the potato chips. And then you become diabetic and obese. All right, this is how it looks. The last thing a low carbohydrate diet does is it increases metabolism. Okay? So this is a study done by Ludwig. He showed that, this was just a year ago, he fed people for a year, a low carb, a medium carb, a high carb diet. And he found that a year out, the metabolism was higher in the low carbohydrate group. Okay? This is important. You guys, has anybody watched Biggest Loser? Yeah, have you ever seen the reunion show? They don't have one. Why don't they have a reunion show? They all gained the weight back. In fact, Kevin Hall at the NIH went and looked at why did they gain the weight back? And do you know what he found? When they lost the weight, their metabolism went down, right? You'd expect that if you're carrying 100 pounds less. 6 years later, after Eat Less and Move More, the epitome of Eat Less and Move More, thank you, Jillian Michaels, after they gained all the weight back, their metabolism never went back up. Okay? David Ludwig showed that with a low carb diet, your metabolism goes up. Your metabolism goes up. So maybe there's unique effects to being low carb. And what's the last way maybe a low carb diet works? You can't really have a processed meat. I mean, maybe you can have like, there's not a lot of processed meat. You have bacon, you have sausage and hot dogs, but really people eat like, you know, hamburgers, chicken, fish, eggs. It's a whole food. So what Kevin Hall at the NIH showed is if you give people whole food, irrespective of calories, versus processed food, the processed food group will eat 600 calories more a day. So all these, you know, potato chips and bread you guys eat, it's basically causing you to eat more, irrespective of calories. So if you just eat whole food, real food, you'll probably eat 600 calories less a day. That's a big deal. So maybe a low carb diet works in all of those ways. So how do we unify this all? Basically, processed carbs and sugar and unhealthy fats lead to insulin resistance, and unhealthy fats are basically these processed oils, okay? Insulin resistance leads to glycemic shifts that make you hungry. Carbs and sugar and healthy fats basically keep you on that cycle of unhealthiness because they raise your blood sugar, your body responds with insulin, you get hungry 2 hours later. Why is it that when you get Chinese food, 3 hours later, the lo mein you didn't eat, you start picking at it, right? Or you're eating the egg roll, you didn't, you know, you were like, oh, I shouldn't eat that. Or after Thanksgiving dinner when you're so full, right? You're ridiculously full, and then 3 hours later, somehow everybody starts picking at the stuffing. And then the apple pie comes out, and 3 hours later, everybody's eating apple pie, right? Or maybe, why is it that 3 hours after the burger, fries, and the milkshake, you're hungry again? It's probably explained by insulin resistance, hyperglycemia, and these glycemic shifts, okay? If you eliminate the carbs, you eliminate a lot of that. So what do you say to this patient, the 32-year-old, the male with obesity, right? You tell him to keep under 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrates a day, focus on meat, fish, eggs, poultry, seafood, plain yogurt, non-starchy vegetables, cauliflower, broccoli, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, all of these are fine. Low-carb fruit. Did you know that a pepper has more vitamin C per calorie than an orange? Yes. Why the hell are we eating oranges? A zucchini, which is not listed up here, has more potassium per calorie than a banana. Has anybody heard that here? Yeah, oranges, you know over there. So oranges and bananas, right? They're out. Zucchini and peppers, they're in. Okay? If you have like a sweet, savory binger, there's ways to make things, you know, if they want ice cream, you can get them a no-carb protein shake. You can get them protein chips, low-carb cookies. These are all out there, right? If you eliminate that sugar, you get rid of that high, you get rid of that dopamine, you can use them all. Almost done, okay? So what should the patient experience? Basically, their insulin level will drop. Maybe you guys have seen this in physiology. They'll start making ketones, and ketones suppress hunger, okay? Ketones suppress hunger. Okay, they'll also have a natriuretic effect and they'll lose salt and water. So tell them to salt their food and drink water till their pee is clear. Okay, it'll take 4 to 6 weeks to suppress appetite, and then we add intermittent fasting in our practice. So we start low carb, we wait till their appetite's suppressed. When they tell you I'm not hungry, then we say begin intermittent fasting. Okay, and intermittent fasting increases their ketones higher, makes them even more makes their appetite suppressed. Start low carb, wait till your appetite suppresses. It'll take 6 weeks, it'll suck. And then just because you'll be, you know, you'll have a lot of, you have to drink water, salt your food. There's an adaptation period, keto flu. But then after that, your appetite will be suppressed. You'll never want to go back. When that happens, when they tell you I skipped a meal, doc, then you tell them to intermittent fast, okay? And we follow our patients with remote data. Remember that study I showed you where the calories were controlled and basically the blood pressure dropped? Well, we see this in our practice every day. We do a lot of remote management. We give them a blood pressure cuff and we watch their blood pressure come down. This is what a blood sugar looks like on a CGM. Before they start their diet, they're going up to 220s with the oatmeal and the fruits. And then this is what it looks like afterwards. All right, so I'm gonna skip the risks. You guys can look that up or ask me about it on their own. And back to the patient. That patient was me. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Did I just like shock your world or not really? Oh yeah, go ahead, just ask it. They're all catching up, man. No, they're catching up. Very much catching up. You know, almost like Great Britain catching up, France catching up, Italy catching up. They're all catching up. There's a little bit of lag, probably cultural issues. They eat more, you know, real food. Some issues. Does that answer your question? But they're skyrocketing. In some like sub-Asian kind of like the Indian population, they're not getting obesity. They're just getting diabetes. So that's a little different phenomenon that may be due to genetics or microbiome. We don't really know. But, and fatty liver. Like fatty livers and diabetes are rampant in India and China right now. Like, and they're just increasing at a monstrous rate. Probably the soybean oil, but we don't really know. Sorry, just ask it. Just call it out.
What's your reply to the studies that look long-term at low-carb diets?
Yeah, that's a great question. Long-term diets. Nobody's ever done the study. Nobody's ever done a real interventional study. They just say, do you eat, what do you eat on a questionnaire? And they poll them 6 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, and they create a low-carb score. Basically, anybody who's left eating meat is drinking soda. You know, anybody who's eating hot dogs is drinking soda. So that it's called a healthy user bias. That's what makes those studies difficult, okay? Because once you control those studies for people who shop at health food stores and take a daily multivitamin and go to their doctor, that effect goes to almost nothing. So that's driven because people who eat meat are basically people who have had to ignore their doctors for the last 50 years. But now you don't ignore your doctors. It was just published in the Annals of Internal Medicine. It's bullshit evidence, really. They just, you know, take a look at that article.
So how long does it take for your body to, so hormone regulation is slow, right? So how long does it take for your body to actually adapt to get that, keep it up?
6 weeks, clinically speaking, 6 weeks is what it takes for people to get not hungry on a low carb diet. 4 to 6 weeks. In younger people, it's much quicker, like 2 to 3 weeks. In older people, it's like 6 weeks. So I say 6 weeks. So they did it with radio-labeled water. There's some controversy with that, but they do it with a radio-labeled water. You don't need to quantify it. You don't really need to quantify it. I mean, clinically speaking. I mean, if you're like in the science realm, there's many different ways to do it.
So how do you like cover like the dirty keto versus keto stuff?
Dirty keto works in the beginning. It stops working pretty quickly. It keeps the cravings going. It works great if somebody's like a ice cream binger and you give them a protein shake, or they're a cookie binger and you give them a low carb cookie, and that's enough to build these ketones. Once those ketones are high, it's easy for them to not eat. I'm pretty sure it acts centrally. Ketones prevent seizures. I don't know if you ever heard of that. So it definitely acts centrally. It inhibits appetite. We don't know the exact mechanism, but I suspect it's a combination of all of these.
When it comes to intermittent fasting, do you think that the effects come from a calorie restriction side of things, or there's a notable metabolic change for like adding on to the fat resource?
Excellent question. They did a calorie control. There's a recent study published in Diabetes. They compared 6 meals a day versus 3 meals a day, and 3 meals a day had lower insulin, more weight loss, right? Calorie controlled, right? So there's some criticism to that study that just came out, but basically if you eat 6 meals a day, same calories versus 3 meals a day, the 3 meal a day group has better insulin sensitivity, lower glucose. So it's probably like a repeat insult type thing. But then look at it from a clinical perspective. If we're all overeating calories, we're all destined to overeat calories. The more you eat, the more times you eat, the more you're going to overeat, right? So I think it's probably a combination of energy overload plus decreased hormonal fat, probably a combination. Yeah, early. So the question is, early restriction versus late restrict. So basically, if you have an early eating window, it's nominally better in terms of metabolism and insulin sensitivity. So like in the morning, cortisol is the highest, you're least insulin sensitive, but surprisingly, people do better hormonally and glycemia-wise when the window is early. There was a study done by Sachin Panda about 2 years ago that showed that. So if you have an early window, let's say like 8 to 2 versus like a 12 to 6, 8 to 2 generally does better. But socially speaking, if you're going to go home and eat with your family, or you're going to, you know what I mean? It just works out. Any restriction is better than no restriction when it comes to time restriction and intermittent fasting. Early is probably better than later. So most people in my practice do late windows. They just delay breakfast. Yep.
So have you guys looked at people who work nights, like that kind of right now affects whether or not you can gain weight, like so people or physicians, nurses who work night shifts, their eating schedule helps to like flip it over. So because I took a nutrition class in grad school, and they showed us a paper that said that people who eat at night, even though they're working all night, they tend to gain weight better.
Yeah, so the question is night shift and its effects on metabolism and meal timing. Honestly, when the data shows that anybody who has a disordered sleep or a disordered sleep schedule has a predisposition to insulin resistance and diabetes, and obesity. So there's definitely effect on circadian rhythm and diabetes. In terms of meal timing, I think that ideally you pick that 6-hour window that works for you and you stick to that. And what I tell my night shift workers is just the same thing. Whatever window is easiest for you. And then if you can't abide by the window, just eat low carb and live to fight another day. Any other questions? Yeah. Great question. Yeah, great question. So it depends on how far down the spectrum you go. If it's like SRO housing that's like in the city, it's very difficult. But at the end of the day, you can go to any fast food restaurant and get a pound of meat for less than $10, which is the SNAP benefit. So you can get like a hamburger, 4-ounce hamburger patty at McDonald's across the street for $1.25. You can get 4 of those for. So you have access to meat for a fairly nominal price, even in the city. Ideally, for people who have ovens and pots and pans, you can get, ground beef is usually cheaper. Frozen meats, frozen berries are cheap. Frozen vegetables are pretty cheap. It's very doable. It is, it's a legitimate concern. I've actually, so the New York City SNAP benefit average is between $10 and $15. I've eaten for $10 a day for a month without any issue. You buy the family pack of beefs, you look at what's on sale at the manager special. It's hard when you have food deserts. Like if you're, kind of up there in Harlem, there's like almost nothing. I mean, you have Whole Foods now, but that's ridiculously expensive. There's some supermarkets that carry it. It's challenging, but ultimately you can get, fast food, a pound of beef for less than $10. Yeah, salmon, canned food, salmon, tuna, all of those are chicken. Those are all, pretty good. The corned beef, sometimes they put carbs in it. Sometimes they don't. The BPA is terrible, but if you're talking about the best of both worlds, you go for what you can afford. Obviously fresh and organic is better, but canned, if we're talking about socioeconomic status, it's canned fruits and vegetables, and just make sure there's no sugar added. Like the corn and the peas, they add sugar. So I would refer you to the article that came out yesterday in the Annals, which it's pretty much the widest look, and it's low quality evidence that's shown that, and it suffers that same healthy user bias. There may be a signal there. It appears that processed meats may have a signal, even when you control for that healthy user. Like let's say, basically if you look at people who are eating hot dogs, it's all people who would disregard what their doctor says. So they're going to be more unhealthy. They're not going to visit their doctor, right? So that issue is called the healthy user bias, and that kind of promulgates the data. But when they took the data and they aggregated it all in this Annals of Internal Medicine article, the bottom line is it's low quality evidence, right? So then there's no interventional data, like the 2-year data that we have from Virta, the 3-year data from Atkins. There was no increased incidence of cancer, but you wouldn't expect to see it, right? So I'm interested in that data when good data when it does come out. It's a legitimate concern in the epidemiologic data. It suffers from the healthy user bias. And when it seems like when you control for the healthy user bias, the effect goes down, which would make me think that it's not a real signal. But I mean, there are mechanistically explanations. If you high temperature cooking, right, has heterocyclic amines, and those could be, they've been implicated in cancer. There's talks of this substance called TMAO, and they think that causes, colon cancer, but it's, fish has more of it, and so the epidemiologic data supports fish, but yet it has more TMAO. So it's not a clear signal, and we don't have enough data, and that's partly what this article showed in the Annals. Anything else? Oh, 2 more.
So what are your thoughts on high cholesterol diets?
Say it again.
High cholesterol diets, or is that like the same?
Yeah, we went over that on the first slide. We showed that if you gave a high-fat diet, that the triglycerides went down and the HDL went up. So it reverses metabolic syndrome. In terms of the LDL, it's about a 2/3 reduction in 2/3 will either have the same LDL or decrease. About 1/3 will increase, and there's a number of reasons for that. So we measure it right in the office. We have a point of care in 5 minutes. We get the answer of the cholesterol. That's a big concern of a lot of our patients. Is my cholesterol going to go up? I just ate 10 eggs, Well, we've yet to see a cholesterol drastically rise. With weight loss, it usually comes down. Oh, I can't miss you. Are you heading out? Oh, okay. Anybody else? Oh, wait. Yeah, all that stuff's helpful. Motivational interviewing is very helpful. Encouragement, learning the balance between, when to support gently and when to support more firmly, and understanding the motivations of the patient so that you can, exploit that to their benefit. So, you know, telling somebody to exercise when their joints hurt, for example, would not be a, you know, great way to motivate a patient. Whereas, you know, sympathizing with them and empathizing with them and providing constant support. We allow patients to text message us, email us. We provide real-time feedback on their, you know, their blood pressures, their weight, everything is tracked in real time. They have scales and blood pressure cuffs in their house. We monitor it. We have cholesterols as often as they need to soothe their grandma and their cardiologist. So we track that aggressively. It is a thing. Scientists don't agree. It is a thing. You know, pizza rat. That's it. That's all I have to say about that. Is food addiction a thing? It's an excellent question. Pizza rat risked his life 2 feet away from somebody filming him to carry a pizza. You tell me, is food addiction a thing? Yeah, you buy it? Okay.
I'm curious, like, like alcoholism, I don't understand this word, like alcohol, or something like, at what point do you even, like, with alcohol, yeah, okay, if you're taking 3 shots, I'm not sure yet, you know, that you're not alcoholic.
It's an excellent question. I would, if you believe in food addiction, which the scientists don't, I believe in food addiction, and I believe that it's a real phenomenon. I would refer you to look at the Yale Food Addiction Scale, okay, or the BED-7, which is basically the binge eating scale. So there's screening tests for binge eating, and the Yale Food Addiction Scale would be a screening for food addiction. If you look at it, nobody's addicted to, you know, lean turkey and broccoli. It's always a combination of carbs and fat. I mean, there's no way. What would drive an animal to eat to the point of self-detriment? You know, it must be something quite powerful and compelling. So I believe in food addiction. Is that it? Okay, sorry that I went over. Oh.